Hello, and welcome to the Monday, October 22nd, 2018 edition of the Raw Recap from Wrestling Universe. I am Matt, and if you missed this week's show, there's obviously a lot to unpack. I'm sure you've heard the news. We're going to get right into it. So the show started off with a promo from Universal Champion Roman Reigns, who comes out by himself, not in his Shield attire, which is extremely unusual. Reigns always wears that gear no matter what he's doing. He comes out to the ring with a mic and he says that he feels like he owes everyone an apology. Says that he told us all he'd be a fighting champion, that he'd be a workhorse, he'd be defending his title week in, week out. Reigns says that he also told us his name was Roman Reigns, but it's not, it's Joe. And it's at this point in the promo that he announces that for 11 years ago he had fought leukemia and beat it, and that he unfortunately is fighting leukemia again. So he said it's because of this he has to relinquish his WWE Championship. Says it's the best thing to do to go home and to focus on his family and his health, and that he's not retiring. So that's the silver lining here, is that he has no plans on retiring. He's very optimistic, very hopeful about his future in the WWE. He says that he will beat this and he will be back, and that we will see him again very soon. Very emotional opening. Reigns lays down the title. The crowd is chanting, "Thank you, Roman," repeatedly. And he heads to the back. While he's headed to the back, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins meet him at the top of the stage there, and a show of support, and they embrace Rollins, his tears in his eyes, and he's obviously very upset, as is Ambrose, and they go back to the locker room, or at least Reigns does, to end the segment there, after the three do their pose. So obviously, that is the talk of the show the entire night. We're going to get recaps from this. After the break, we immediately get Corey Graves, and Renee Young talking briefly about Roman Reigns and how hard a worker he is, and how heartbreaking his announcement was, and wishing him the best. So that is how the show opened. If you missed that piece of news, I'm sorry to be the one that told you. But moving on into the show, as we have to, we have Lio Rush out to hype Bobby Lashley, who has come out for a match with Finn Balor. Actually, much more lengthy than the typical Lashley match. Lots of back and forth, not a bad match between the two, who are both very capable in-ring workers. I think, sometimes we forget how good Lashley can be. He's not, among the greats or anything like that, but he's still a good, wrestler in the ring, and of course so is Balor. So much better match than we've seen lately, and I really did not expect it, but Finn Balor did pick up the victory. I thought honestly that this might be one of those feuds with just a series of squash matches on repeat, like we've seen with Lashley and a lot of the other guys, and I was hoping Finn Balor didn't get the same treatment. So good for them for moving in a different direction with this match, as obviously Finn Balor deserves quite a bit more. Now the next match is Sasha Banks in her first match since returning last week, coming out with Bayley and Natalya in her corner. Takes on Ruby Riott, who of course has the Riott Squad in her corner. And another solid match, of course with distractions from both sides, as you would expect, until finally Ruby Riott picks up the surprising victory on Banks to finish this match. Now, I didn't expect Ruby Riott to finish this match on top either. I honestly thought they were going to give Banks the win in her return match, but I think that honestly Ruby Riott needs it more. I think the Riott Squad definitely needs some momentum. I don't think that they've really done enough with the Riott Squad as of late to make them a credible threat in the women's division, and Ruby Riott picking up a win over someone like Sasha Banks definitely goes some way in helping to create more legitimacy for the group. So not a bad match there overall. I agree with the way it was booked. After the commercial, we get the return of D-Generation X, complete with the old school DX music and filters on the screen, before Shawn Michaels and Triple H come out, and they have the glow sticks, and they're kind of peddling their merch and everything. Triple H starts off the promo by addressing the Brothers of Destruction and their segment from last week, saying it's going to take a lot more than fear to get to them. And Shawn Michaels gets on the mic and talks about nostalgia, and how nostalgia is really just a polite way of saying old. Triple H says, then again, there's a movie out called Halloween that's #1 at the box office, just like it was 40 years ago. Says fans packed an arena in Australia just a few weeks ago to see them. He says maybe old is just a really polite way of saying we're better. So Triple H says at Crown Jewel they aren't coming to make them laugh, and Shawn goes to say that the traditional, if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you line, before being interrupted by some static sounds and flickering lights as we hear the gong hit for Undertaker's music. Now, I for one thought that we were going to get a face-off and that the Brothers of Destruction were actually going to come out. Instead, we go to the Titantron, where the Brothers of Destruction say that Triple H should have stayed away and Shawn Michaels should have stayed retired. We get the 2 tombstones with each member of DX's name written on them. respectively, showing their dates of birth and the date November 2nd, 2018, which we know is Crown Jewel event. And the Undertaker and Kane go on. They cut a promo, and it's pretty typical, nothing out of the ordinary here, just kind of what you'd expect for the feud that we're having right now. There's some more spooky talk as they reach for their shovels and start piling dirt on the empty grave sites to end the promo. Not a bad segment to carry things along. I don't think there's a whole ton that you really can do with this. I wish that they would do more, that they would get a little bit more creative with it. But overall, it is really just a throwback to, you know, the heydays of DX and the Brothers of Destruction. And I think that it's fine what they're doing. I do wish that there was some more excitement they could build into it, or they could be a little bit more original, but I'm okay with them basically acknowledging and treating it like a big nostalgia run, like it really is. Anyway, following the break, we find out that at Crown Jewel we will get a new Universal Champion, and it will be Brock Lesnar taking on Braun Strowman in a singles match now to crown the new champ. So I think this is interesting because we really have no idea what to expect. Fans have been very adamant now for a while that Braun Strowman should have won the championship as far back as maybe, say, Elimination Chamber, but he's never been the champion to this point, and Lesnar is still a proven commodity for WWE, and they've recently turned Strowman heel, so everything going on right now is obviously very different, very strange, and it's very up in the air, and it's anyone's guess really what they plan on doing at Crown Jewel. I would say that it makes sense to put the title on Strowman, but who really knows? Anyway, out next we do get Paul Heyman to address Brock Lesnar's match against Braun Strowman, which we really just found out about. As only he could, Heyman addresses the situation with Roman Reigns and how it's been an honor to work in the presence of Roman Reigns, essentially. He says that Braun Strowman's not in Brock Lesnar's league or category or even in the same species as Brock Lesnar, and goes on putting Strowman down before quickly being interrupted by Strowman, who comes out with a mic and tells Heyman he needs to tell Brock Lesnar to prepare for Strowman, and that when he wins the title, he's not just going to show up when he wants to, but every Monday night. He says that even though he and Reigns have had their differences in the past, as soon as he beats Leukemia, he'll be the first in line for a shot at the title. But for now, Brock Lesnar is going to get these hands. Now, this effectively turns Strowman face, so I think we're back to where we were just a few months ago, unfortunately, with Roman Reigns out of the picture at the moment. Immediately after the promo from Strowman, Drew McIntyre comes from behind and knocks Strowman to the ground with a Claymore kick to end the segment. And again, I think it's just it's interesting right now where we're at, because now we have Braun Strowman as a face taking on Lesnar as still a heel for the WWE Universal Championship at the Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia, which is something that fans have kind of been hoping for a long time. At least, you know, Braun Strowman as the number one face in the company, or positioned that way anyway. That's what people have been hoping for from Strowman. So it's interesting to see where this is going to go. We go back to the ring, and JoJo introduces Elias, who is again out under the spotlight with his guitar. Elias says that last week Apollo Crews interrupted him, and so he wrote a song about it. But as he's going to play it, of course, Crews' music hits for yet another interruption, and it looks like we're actually going to have a match this time as Apollo Crews gets a formal introduction. So this match overall, not bad. There were definitely some sloppy spots, and in terms of execution, I think both men could have been a lot smoother. But I think that that's to be expected with two members of the roster who hardly ever get to wrestle full-on matches, especially Crews, who looked great athletically but definitely needs to get some more time in the ring, I think. Elias picked up the win after hitting the drift away for the pinfall. And overall, like I said, this was not great, not terrible either. It's just something that I think shows that the two guys that were in the match need a little bit more time on screen, or at least in the ring, because Elias gets plenty of time on screen. We come back from commercial, and JoJo announces yet again Elias, who is up on the top of the ramp with all of his gear, his guitar and everything, and he wants to play his song that he wanted to play earlier. He's tired of getting interrupted. But of course, he is quickly interrupted again, this time by Baron Corbin, who says he's sorry, but as active general manager, it's his job to keep the show rolling. He says we just don't have time with the contract signing and all the matches. Elias goes on to say that he knows that Stephanie McMahon is a fan and that she'd want to hear his song. Baron says that may be true, but he's been appointed to run the show, and if Stephanie didn't like Elias, he'd actually fire him. Elias has apologized and says that while Corbin is rambling on, he was writing a song in his head about him, which he sings. The song is about Corbin being a kiss ass, and Corbin tells the crew to cut Elias' mic while he's singing. Elias keeps playing until his mic and guitar go off, and Corbin tells Elias that he works for him and to get off the stage. Elias leaves, and Corbin goes on making his announcement before getting nailed in the back with the guitar, which gets a huge pop. Elias walks to the back to end the segment, and it looks like they've turned Elias face, which I think is a really smart move, despite him being a fantastic heel. Elias is a lot like a Chris Jericho type, in my opinion. He reminds me of him in the early 2000s, where he's kind of capable of transitioning between face and heel because his mic work is just so great. His charisma is always solid. He connects with the audience in a really unique way, and I just think he's one of the few guys that could really pull that off. So really great segment, really funny, honestly. If you get the chance, go watch it. It really is worth the probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes it would take to watch both the segments before the match and after the match. It was interesting. Now, after the break, we go back to the ring where Michael Cole was waiting to announce the 2 women competing in the main event of this Sunday's Evolution pay-per-view. First, Nikki Bella, followed by Ronda Rousey. Obviously, this is for the contract signing. And when Ronda gets in the ring, the Bellas immediately run out. So they're afraid of Ronda, and Rousey gets in the ring. She takes the mic and asks them where they're going. Nikki says clearly Ronda's looking for a fight, and Ronda says that she's not looking for a fight. She's just looking to make sure that the contract gets signed so that she can fight Nikki on Sunday. She promises that it's safe for them to get back in the ring, and says that if either of them can hurt Ronda with her hands tied behind her back, then her mother would be ashamed of her. Now, the Bellas get back in the ring and start talking trash. They start talking about Ronda's mother and how she gave her word that she'd win the Olympics and that she'd never get hurt in the octagon, and they tell her that her mother is already ashamed of her. Nikki reaches for the pen and signs the contract and then slaps Ronda across the face. Now, Ronda looks pissed, but she keeps her cool and she signs the contract as well. Rousey picks up the mic after signing and says, "I give you my word, come Sunday, I will end you," before dropping the mic, grabbing her title and heading to the back with her music playing. This was fine. This was solid. Honestly, there wasn't anything bad here. I honestly thought that Ronda was going to attack either way, but she didn't, and I think that was a smart move. They're trying to show character. They're trying to build Ronda to be somebody who has a little bit more character than your traditional superstar, or is kind of more of a stand-up person. And while that might be a little bit kind of boring for most of us, I think that it works for her character and overall it plays well, to build somewhat more of a consistency in her character overall. The next match is a fatal four-way between Dana Brooke, Tamina Snuka, Nia Jax, and Ember Moon, who's the only one of the 4 to get a formal introduction on screen. The crowd was dead silent during most of this match, especially the beginning. They tried to build some tension between Nia Jax and Tamina and kind of hype them as 2 of the powerhouse women in the division for the Battle Royal coming up, but it just didn't get any feedback from the crowd. The match ends pretty quickly with Ember Moon nailing Tamina with the Eclipse for the pinfall victory, and really there's not a whole lot to talk about here. It kind of leads me back to the whole Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Natalya match against the Riot Squad. I'm wishing they'd taken Banks and Bayley and put them in the Battle Royal, because that match should feel dramatically more exciting than it does at the moment. Though I am excited about the pay-per-view, this match in particular didn't really do a whole lot for me. After the break, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins come out in their Shield gear through the crowd for the Tag Team Championship match. McIntyre and Ziggler are out next, and we are set for the main event. Another solid tag team match between these 4, as we've become very accustomed to over the past month or 2 that we've kind of seen these 4 guys going at it. This wasn't one of their better clashes, I will say that. There were a few sloppy and mistimed sequences here and there, but overall it was still good. It was still at least the standard that we expect from these guys. The match came to an end after Braun Strowman's music hit, as the referee was simultaneously getting inadvertently knocked out of the ring. During all of that, Strowman comes out and attacks McIntyre, which spills out into the crowd and eventually backstage. Now, the match is still going on during all of this because the referee is knocked out. He doesn't know what's going on. So McIntyre and Strowman are feuding, or they're fighting back into the crowd and then into the backstage area. Ziggler is left alone to defend the titles against Ambrose and Rollins by himself, and Ziggler goes to use the title on Rollins as a weapon while the ref is still down on the outside. But Ambrose does pull the title off of him on the outside of the ring, allowing Rollins to hit the curb stomp on Ziggler as Ambrose gets the referee to come for the pin and the victory. Ambrose and Rollins are the new tag team champions, and I did not expect that, but it's immediately a very strange thing because as the 2 are celebrating in the ring, Ambrose finally turned heel on Seth Rollins in a very, very aggressive way here following the match. Ambrose hit Dirty Deeds on Rollins right on top of the tag team and Intercontinental titles, and immediately started hitting the mat in frustration and anger, yelling and grabbing his head. He's just confused. He looks kind of psychotic right here, and just struggling mentally with everything that's going on after hitting Dirty Deeds on Rollins. Now, this isn't all. This isn't the end of the segment. Rollins looks on concerned as he starts to come to, and he reaches his arm toward Ambrose, who just snapped at that moment and started bashing Rollins with strikes on the ground before throwing him outside the ring, where he continued to beat him down. And it's just a very aggressive beatdown. Ambrose pulled the mat off the concrete outside and hit Rollins with Dirty Deeds on top of that. After the beatdown, Ambrose looked just completely shaken up. He just did not look himself at all. Very frustrated, very emotional, and very angry. You could hear a little bit of what Ambrose was saying during all of this. He asked if Rollins if he still thinks it's funny, something along those lines, a couple of times, and you couldn't really make out a whole lot else other than that. So who knows what this is going to end up as, what it's going to play into, but a very interesting heel turn, and one that we've all been waiting for a long time. And it's hard to make sense of exactly why it happened right here. I think that there was a lot of very obvious foreshadowing in the last couple of weeks, but with everything that happened to start off the event tonight, with the announcement by Roman Reigns, I think that the timing was just very, very unexpected, very odd. So I think it was pretty effective heel turn, and I for one am very excited to see Ambrose as a heel again. I think that the turn itself was interesting because I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody else expected it, just with everything that was going on, and that is exactly what you want in a heel turn. You don't want people to expect that it's happening. I've seen plenty of heel turns in the past, especially where tag teams split up, where you could just see it from a mile away, and obviously, like I said before, a lot of foreshadowing here, but nothing that I could really see happening this week specifically. I just thought they were kind of taking a break from that, and the Shield got their win too. They're the tag team champions, and Ambrose and Seth are now kind of feuding, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens next week, because Ambrose is, I know he's got the unhinged moniker and everything like that, but he really has been extra unhinged lately, so maybe he'll be back to happy, nice Ambrose again next week. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's it for Raw this week. A very interesting show, and one that was obviously very emotional to start off with, of course. But also a lot of very interesting and unique, or at least different kind of developments going on. Braun Strowman and Elias turn face, Dean Ambrose turning heel. Definitely going to be interesting to see how it all plays out next week. Now, what did you guys think of Raw? Because I know I can't be alone here in thinking that this was kind of a wild, different show than we're used to seeing. And I think that Raw has been picking up a bit lately. The last couple of Raws have been very interesting. Last week's Raw wasn't quite what I expected, but this week's Raw, obviously aside from the opening, was very well done. I think the heel turns and face turns were pretty smart. The Braun one was kind of forced, I think that had to happen. They didn't really have much of an option there. But overall, what did you guys think about the show? How did you feel about the heel turns, the face turns, the hype revolution? Are you guys excited for that? I personally think it's going to be a pretty good pay-per-view. The women and the entire division over there, they generally tend to step it up really well when it comes to high-profile matches, and there's certainly a lot of those that night. But leave your opinions in the comment section down below. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, lay the smack down on that like button and ring the bell to subscribe.